Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second annual Rockstars of Urban Education series, sponsored by the University of Chicago Women's Board Urban Education Institute Partners Committee. I'm Alice Sobel, Chair of the Women's Board, and on behalf of the Women's Board UEI Partners co-chairs, Margie Janis, Priscilla Kirsten, and Liz Thompson, thank you for joining us for tonight's incredible panel discussion. Priscilla and Liz. I'd also like to welcome you on behalf of our Women's Board UEI Partners Committee. We are some 70 in number, a year and a half old, and committed to improving urban education. Our committee members have blue ribbons on their name tags, so please feel free to talk with them if you'd like to know more about becoming involved. And finally, I'd like to recognize Chuck Lewis, Governing Board member of the Charter School and University trustee, and Penny Sebring, co-founder of the Consortium on Chicago School Research. And now I'd like to bring Priscilla Kirsten, member of the University of Chicago Women's Board Steering Committee, U of Chicago Charter School Governing Board member, and Priscilla and her husband Steve founded Square One Foundation, a family foundation committed to education. Priscilla is president of Square One and board chair of High Jump. Priscilla, thank you for bringing on tonight's exciting program. Priscilla.
And actually, thank you, Alice. Alice actually hosted tonight's event, so thank you very much for your generosity. I was thinking about it being a freezing cold night in February and wondering why in the world 200 people would come hear a moderated panel on urban education. And I had this almost existential question of why are we here? So I would venture to guess that every single one of us in this room is passionate about providing excellent education to all of our children. And then I think about the experts that we get to hear tonight who commit day in and day out to providing that excellence. We have an extraordinary panel that represents the cross-section of disciplines necessary to improve and deliver quality education. Our panelists are practitioners, policy experts, advocates, civic leaders, and philanthropists, and it takes all of us to do this work. I am here because my husband Steve and I are big fans of the Urban Education Institute. UEI is unique. UEI does groundbreaking research, applied research, through the Consortium of Chicago School Research. UEI prepares exemplary teachers for CPS through its Urban Teachers Education Program. UEI is on the ground running a pre-K through 12 charter school with the goal of college. And I get to tell you that 90% of this year's seniors have already been accepted into college. And finally, UEI, through UChicago Impact, provides school systems with the highest quality diagnostic tools and training to produce reliably excellent schooling. No one else does this, and UEI is exemplary. I also know you're here to hear them tonight and not me, so let me introduce our first rock star, tonight's moderator, Sara Stoelinga. Sara is a senior director at UEI, and along with Tim Knowles, co-leads all of aspects of the Institute. This does not even do her justice. She is truly a rock star, a jack of all trades, absolutely brilliant, and she's even really fun to work with. And her parents are here tonight. I'm not just saying all these nice things. Jan and Joe Hallman, and they flew in from the Twin Cities for some balmy weather, I guess. So enjoy the panel. Thank you all.
Thank you, Priscilla. And as you know, it's very high stakes. The most high stakes members of the audience are sitting right over there. We want to start out by extending a special thanks to the University of Chicago Women's Board UEI Partners Committee, Alice Sobel, Liz Thompson, Priscilla Kirsten, and Margie Janis for putting together this event, and for all of the staff who worked so hard to invite you here to spend the evening with us. We want to welcome you to Urban Schooling Policy, Practice, and Hope in Chicago and in our nation. Thank you for taking the time to engage and listen and think with us as we dig into issues of urban schooling. This evening, we invite you to look clear-eyed at what's happening in education, to dig into the challenges, the pressing challenges that face urban communities, urban schools, and urban students. We invite you with us to sift through the complexities that face our children, the most needy and deserving children, low-income students of color, as we try to educate them and take them into a bright future. But at the same time, tonight we invite you to think about exciting possibilities and new pathways into more successfully educating our students, raising expectations for our students, for our teachers, for our leaders, thinking about new and innovative ways to organize schoolhouses and school districts to do justice to our children, and creating effective policy levers to define and drive and support strong practice across our country, and to think about innovative roles for the citizenry and for philanthropy in doing this work. In short, we hope that you will leave this evening, above all else, feeling hopeful about the work that we're doing. Our panel will explore both the current state of education, so looking clear-eyed at what's working and what isn't in Chicago and across the country, and then we will look ahead to think about innovation and to think about ways to improve urban schooling. These are very difficult and pressing problems that we face, and as Priscilla said, we need to bring a lot of different lenses to bear in order to be able to do this work successfully. And as such, our panelists represent the remarkable breadth and experiences and expertise that we need at the table on education reform, on applied research, philanthropy, policy, and daily practice from the classroom to the school district to the nation. And so we begin with the current state of education and then focus on what is possible in looking ahead. And so our distinguished panelists, it's my pleasure to start by introducing them, starting with Barbara Byrd-Bennett, our Chief Executive Officer of Chicago Public Schools. Prior to being in Chicago, Barbara has spent more than 2 decades, as many of you know, as a teacher and principal in the New York City Department of Education and in many districts across the country, helping to improve urban education. So please welcome Barbara. Thank you very much. Next, we have Tim Knowles, the John Dewey Director at the University of Chicago Urban Education Institute. Tim oversees UEI, which, as you just heard from Priscilla, brings together research and practice like no other organization. And as many of you know, Tim has dedicated his entire career to urban public schooling across the country. So please welcome Tim, not Tom. To my left, Mellody Hobson, the president of Ariel Investments and financial contributor, CBS Morning Show and CBS News. Among many other commitments, Mellody supports education through her work with After School Matters, the Chicago Public Education Fund, and the ongoing support and generous support of the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools. So thank you very much, Mellody. And finally, to her left, Robin Steans, the Executive Director of Advance Illinois. In addition to having spent the past 13 years working on public school reform, including her family's commitment to the North Lawndale community, Robin has also taught at public schools in Boston, San Francisco, and Chicago. And at Advance Illinois, working on policy issues, pressing policy issues in education across the state of Illinois. So with that, let's dig in. For the panelists, please fight fair if you're going to fight. But I also welcome you to fight, interrupt each other, dig in. Let's make this a conversation. Let's make it interesting and compelling for our audience. And we're going to start with thinking about the current state of education. And Barbara, I'm going to start with you about talking about what are the reasons, looking at Chicago, to be hopeful. What do you think are the top 2 or 3 reasons in Chicago that we should feel a growing confidence in our schools based on your experiences?
You've limited me to 2 or 3. I think there are many, many more. And so my colleagues will probably fight me as I just start ticking off a number of them. Let me start with when we first arrived here, prior to the mayor's administration, the Chicago Public Schools had a school day that was 22% shorter than any other school district in the country. We now have a longer school day so that we have more time to devote to the quality instruction that our children deserve. When you take a look, and I just would like to tick off a couple of stats, we also now have 4 of the 5 high schools that are top high schools in the state, right here in Chicago. 6 of the 10 elementary schools, the highest performing, right here in Chicago. We now have 174 schools that are the level 1 schools, the highest performing schools. It's the largest number of high-performing schools in our district. Our graduation rate has moved from 65, it is now 65.4, and over 3 years we've gained 6 points. We're on track, with freshmen on track, for an 85% graduation rate in the next 4 years, and we are like racehorses with blinders because we are going to make that target. I mean, I could go on and on. We've got full-day kindergarten now. When I first arrived here, we had some children who had 2 hours of kindergarten and some who had a full day. And the failure to provide the kind of equity of opportunity for those little people was very important to us, and now all of our children have full-day kindergarten. We've increased the number of preschool seats. We all know how important preschool and early education is for the start. We want our children to be, our schools to be ready for the children, as well as our children being ready for school. So those are just a couple. Some more?
So Robin, why don't we turn to you? Go ahead and give us the policy perspective on this. From your lens, what do you see that makes you feel hopeful?
So I get to look at schools and districts around the state, and I can actually endorse a number of the things. I mean, 2 very important statistics. About 10, 15 years ago, fewer than half of the kids who started in high school in CPS were going to go on to graduate. Odds are, if you went to a CPS high school, you weren't going to graduate. And now you've got 2/3. That's right. That is, and what's notable is that it's not been bumpy, it's been a slow, steady slide. And what's even more notable, if you peel it back, for those of us who pay closer attention, and I include Tim in that, is that there are reasons for that. There are decisions that CPS has made that, despite the fact that there's been turnover in the last number of years, that the district had stayed the course on having better counseling support, though we're not anywhere close to what we need to be. We did it in a targeted way in a number of schools. It's proven to be very effective, and a number of other strategies. So it's not only tremendous growth, but it's growth that reflects a very deliberate plan that they've stuck with. So I think that's encouraging. The other thing you might not know, and you'd probably not know it to read it, and I know we're going to talk about challenges later, so I don't want to minimize those because they're real and they're hard, is that CPS, it wouldn't surprise you because we have a more at-risk population, that the performance of CPS tends to lag that of the state. But in the last 6 years, and I don't look further back because the testing changed, CPS has cut its gap with the state in half. And my guess is most of you don't know that from reading it. And again, the good news is that's been slow, steady, consistent growth that has not wavered. In fact, I think we're at 7 years as the most recent ones came out. And again, there are some reasons for that are backed up. I don't know if I'm sharing information I'm not supposed to, but CPS, you heard it here first. You heard it here first. Don't get me in trouble. You're videotaping, The CPS, because we have a more at-risk population than the rest of the state, though the level of risk around the state is starting to grow, and we're not so unique as we used to be, but CPS tends to grapple with issues before the rest of the state. And they tend to do it very forthrightly, and they tend to have more capacity because Chicago's a pretty rich area in terms of intellectual and other capital. And so one of the things you see is they embraced higher expectations for kids, and they embraced the challenge of saying, look, at the end of the day, if we don't have great teachers in every classroom, and if we want the great teachers in every classroom, because that's going to be the major driver, we better really pay attention to leadership at the building, because the single biggest reason teachers get to leave is they don't have support. So CPS, again, very deliberately, even through the change in administration, and very much consistent with what CEO Bennett's been doing, have focused on those issues. So when you see survey results on the 5 essentials, and you compare it across the state, what teachers and students have to say about CPS schools is that the expectations are higher, and that the leadership level is higher because of those very deliberate. Does that mean all the problems are done? No, and we'll talk more, I know, but those are reasons to be, I think, encouraged.
Yeah, Robin, I do want to add there that one of the things that I found that was absolutely amazing is that the teacher evaluation system, the metric that was used here, had not been changed in 40 years. And if you looked at some of the criteria for determining whether a teacher was a successful teacher, most of the women in this room would be offended. Terribly offended. I mean, I almost had a crazy moment. Stephanie said, come down. And so we've moved to the REACH system of evaluation, and 96% of our administrators tell us that this is such a valuable tool because now I can work with teachers and I know where to zero in so that they improve their practice. And that's a real, I mean, we're laser focused on that as well. We just have to stay the course in that.
So Mellody, tell us what you see from your perspective in terms of the things that are hopeful about what's going on in education in Chicago from After School Matters perspective.
Well, what I think is interesting is that Robin and Barbara talk specifically about what I would call the ground game, and I would look at it at the 30,000 square feet perspective and say, what am I seeing up high? And there are three things that I would talk about. One is, I think that we should be hopeful because we have very strong leadership, and we have very strong leadership in three places. Clearly, a mayor who is 100% committed to this issue. It cannot be taken for granted. Two, clearly an administrative aspect of the leadership that is extraordinarily strong and has a vision which cannot be taken for granted and has the appropriate level of focus, because there's so many issues you can just kind of try to master them all and tackle nothing. And then thirdly, this room speaks to the third aspect of that leadership, where we're all in, you know, we're in it. We're in it to win it, the entire community. And if you look at the corporate community, it's rare to meet a corporate executive running an organization or at the top of an organization that does not have some educational connection to the public schools in the city of Chicago. So that's one big one, which is leadership, and that's a big deal that we have that.
It's not common elsewhere in the
No,
country.
that's exactly right. Chicago is unique in that regard. The second thing for me is, as is already suggested, the civic involvement here. I should back up in the leadership and say one other thing, which I know will be controversial to some. The mayor, the administration, and the union. And I'm going to say the union because they are as focused and driven about their own agenda as anyone, and that to me is a very good thing. So their intensity is there, the leadership is there. Karen Lewis is a smart woman who, again, has her own vision, and so that leadership I do as a triumvirate. In terms of civic involvement, this room is a very clear example of that, and what I've already suggested. And last but not least, I think what is something that we should be very, very happy about is that Chicago has a reputation nationally for pushing reform and pushing progress in education. Because nationally we're known for that, I think that, and we are known to tackle some really hard issues like closing schools and some of the other things and all the fallout that comes from that actually puts us in a box that we have to keep doing it. You know, there's nowhere to turn on this issue. And I think, you know, all eyes have been on Chicago for a long time. And that's, I think, a really good pressure for us to continue to affect change.
Great. And speaking of pressure, Tim, have all the answers been taken here?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to change the subject. I'm going to change the subject entirely. For a minute, I want to talk about this Rockstar thing. I'm serious about this. So do you know who Pete Best is? Pete Best was the Beatle who was fired when they found Ringo Starr. And I wanted to say, I feel a little bit up here like Pete Best.
Well, you are the only man.
But there's something you don't know about me. Or some people know this about me, but not very many. I was born in England, and I was raised there, and so I can talk like this. And I can actually sound like a rock star, unlike these layabouts, right? So I'm going to talk like that for the rest. No, I'm not. So hopeful. I'm hopeful. I want to underscore something you heard from Barbara, but is incredibly important. So I'm going to say it again. These are the numbers: 55 to 83, I think. 55 to 84.5. What does that represent? The consortium, UEI's research group, discovered something about ninth grade. And some of you have heard me say this, but it bears repeating again and again. The ninth grade, how you do in ninth grade is a better predictor of whether you will finish high school than your race, than the neighborhood you come from, than your family income, and your prior test scores combined. So it's an unbelievable predictor, and it's something that we actually control as educators. So that the numbers in Chicago in terms of on-track rates have gone from 55% to 83.5% since 2007. That's a story that isn't being borne out in any other city in the country, to my knowledge. And we know those students, that's literally tens of thousands more children who are being retained in school and are finishing high school. So this is an extraordinary reason to be hopeful in Chicago. It really is, it's like the national story that needs to happen, Amy. So that's one reason I'm hopeful. I have another one, though. Do I have time?
Absolutely.
So this is a term that is got besmirched. It's the Common Core standards. But forget about Common Core because people have conflated the Common Core with also. You hear lots of critiques of these things called the Common Core standards. The critique is about everything except for the standards. It's about Bill Gates sitting in his study, single-handedly writing the standards. You hear this critique. It's true. It's about, this is really a conspiracy for Pearson, a monolith, to come and test children full-time and just forego teaching, just testing. You hear that it's a conspiracy on the right and a conspiracy on the left, but what you don't hear is a critique of the standards themselves. And so this is an opportunity, I think, for our city and for our country to say, let's actually raise our sights. Let's see if we can raise the sights in a way that will ensure, particularly for poor children growing up in urban America, that we're going to hold them to a different standard. And so I think that's an important reason to remind ourselves in the sort of thicket and underbrush of the political critique of a lot of the reforms that go on, that there's some real power there.
And Tim, when you look at the Common Core state standards, you begin to take a look at, okay, what kinds of nationally validated, internationally validated programs do we know that embrace Common Core, that embrace high standards for kids? IB. Mm-hmm. What do we know about the future for the 21st century? STEM. Here in Chicago, and many people don't know it, we have the largest IB, International Baccalaureate program, in the nation. More students in our high schools, more of our K-8 schools being prepared to feed children, if you will, into those high schools. Our STEM program growing. All of that, however, submerged under the umbrella of high standards, Common Core state standards. And that's exactly what drives the numbers that drive graduation rates. We took the FOT, the freshman on track, and began to say, okay, if we can figure that out for ninth grade kids, can we figure this out for other children? So what does what we call student on track look like? To continue to monitor, are students coming to school? If they're coming, where are they learning? What is the expulsion, suspension, new news, rate there? And just really embracing the metric that was put together for freshmen on track in ninth grade for all of our students, so we can really capture our students before they fall through any cracks.
If I could just add one thing, I think the International Baccalaureate program does not get enough attention either when you think about the messaging. I was the first class of IB in Chicago at the Ogden School. And the program was so rigorous. It was insane. I cannot tell you how hard it was. It was just like one of the most insane things you've ever imagined. Like your teacher coming in one day with a phone book and giving you a page and telling you you had until the next night to memorize names and addresses and phone numbers for just Smiths. And then saying to you, I'm teaching you how to memorization skills. I can memorize anything quickly because of it, as an example. But these all grades were read aloud.
That is insane.
All grades read aloud. All grades.
I wasn't going to say anything.
All grades read aloud. But it comes in handy when you go to do television at 5 in the morning. And you have to have stats and figures, and you can quickly develop mnemonics to remember them. And I can do that. All grades read out loud.
So,
Which
Robin,
was,
I'm gonna
something that, and the only reason I say that is I don't think people realize how rigorous those programs are, they are more rigorous than a lot of private schools
That's right.
in our city.
So
Nor do they
Robin, I'm
realize
going to
how
let
many-
you get your word in edgewise, but I want to make sure that we save a little bit of time for the challenges. And so our panelists have focused here on reasons to be hopeful at the policy level, things we see in the schoolhouse level, programmatic changes that we've seen in Chicago Public Schools, the use of successful indicators to really drive the school system towards improvement. But this is layered in an environment, in a context where we know that the challenges are real every single day. So Robin,
How
you
about
can
if I make
say,
my comment and I'll
yes.
segue it into the
You
challenges?
can back into your
How about
challenge.
that?
If you can
I
connect
do
the
that.
two,
I can connect those.
you can do it.
That is an authentic assessment I will pass. But here's the point I wanted to make. The good news, Common Core standards really are critical, and the need to raise expectations is critical. And I'm going to tell you that there's a good news, bad news piece to that. We're starting to do that as a state. So we already raised sort of the cut scores, if you will, what it takes to demonstrate grade level proficiency on the current set of exams. And so for those of you who read closely, and I suspect you're not here on a cold February night if you don't read this stuff closely, the state scores dropped. So that's very discouraging, but there's a lot of very good, and they're going to continue to. As we move to do Common Core, as we move to the next generation of assessments, which will start to roll out over the next few years, you're going to see test scores drop in the short term. But there are two reasons that's phenomenally good news, but it'll lead me to the challenge. One, it's good news. I'm a CPS parent, have been for 13 years. I want to know as early as possible if my kid's got a problem. I want to know in second or third grade if they're not where they should be. Whereas the way it was is we didn't know until 11th grade. Well, that's too late. I can't go back and make up those years. So if you want to galvanize your parents to be part of the solution, you have to give them honest information about their kids. So that's extremely good news. It will be very energizing of an enormously important resource. The second reason is there is all sorts of really fascinating research that says wherever you tell kids they have to be, and by extension all the people around and the educators, that's what they hit. So Massachusetts sets its expectations higher. Lo and behold, that's where the majority of kids hit, right where the expectations are. Not a ton higher, not a ton lower. And every other state, if you look at them in the country, where they set their expectations, that's where the majority of kids cluster. And so because we've set them low, that's where the majority of our kids have clustered. So raising them, and that's not going to happen overnight, but over the long haul, if we can stay the course, it's tremendously important, which leads to the challenge. Will we stay the course? This requires political will of several sorts. First of all, districts out in the rest of the world have to pass referenda to get money. We're starving our schools. 2/3 of our schools right now are deficit spending. If we we've only spent $7 billion as a state. We've cut close to $1 billion of that in the last 3 years in a very compressed period of time. So here we're saying, do these new Common Core standards, hold them to higher expectations. Start evaluating your teachers, hold them to higher expectations, which is also very time consuming. And do all of that with fewer and fewer resources. And that's a very tough combination. All at the same time while they're going to be publicly embarrassed. When the way they're going to make up the money they're not getting from the state is they got to go out and sell referendums. And that means they've got to look good and people have to feel like so you're creating a circumstance that makes it very difficult to stay the course. So as a state, and to an extended amount here in Chicago, you need to have the courage. First of all, we're going to have to invest if we're serious. Now, considering how to do that, we can talk more about that if you want to, but nobody likes school funding. But you need stability, so I hope we chain you to your chair. There does need to be, it's not good to have repeated. You do need a good working relationship with the union. That's really critically important. It is part of a triumvirate. You need that working and I want to give you credit. I know that's something that you've taken very seriously and put a lot of effort into. And then the other is that you really have to, there are pieces of the puzzle that, the IB program is a great case in point, actually, Mellody, that there have been studies, the consortium actually did one as we've expanded the IB program. My kids were in the IB program at Lincoln Elementary School. That the IB program adds a lot of value, but where it adds the most value is where you have counseling in place in the high school. And right now we've got a counselor for every 350 students. In Chicago. I mean, you know what the need base is. You want to know what it is at Parker or Latin or the lab school? It's one counselor for every, like 30, 40 kids? Maybe less. And that's with kids who have an enormous amount of resources at home to support them. So if we're serious about this, you really want to take what we're doing and supercharge it, you have got to provide that. We have got to make the hard decisions to do that and do it. And that's one of the reasons the graduation, where we've invested, it's paid dividends. So those are just a few.
So if I had there are many challenges. And I think that if we If I focused on all the challenges, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. So I have to really narrow my vision and narrow the lens to say, what are the 2 or 3 critical challenges that I must address in order to provide the kind of leverage we need to in fact stay the course. And the first is obviously the funding. The state of Illinois is 48 out of 50 in its investment in education. 48 out of 50.
might have dropped to 50 in the latest round.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So I won't get up tomorrow. No, it's 48 out of 50.
48, we'll call it 48.
We'll call it 48. And I mean, you take a look at the pension crisis, the pension situation that we're facing. It's not going away. It has not, Springfield is not, and I'm not doing this, it's just not my style. The fact of the matter is that we need a legislature to address the pension issue so that we are the only school district that I must spend 12% of my operating budget in order to pay for pension. We closed darn near $1 billion deficit. I must tell you, when I first came here and the mayor said, he was very candid, he said, you know, we have a deficit, and I processed what he said to say million. We have $1 million deficit. And I'm like, I came from New York, I closed 250 million, you know, what is this? And I must have repeated million, and the mayor said, no, Barbara. Billion, like Barbara Byrd-Bennett. And it was like the BBB moment, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, you just think of it. If we did not, with what we paid for pension last year, the pension, it would have been $1,000 more for every single child in our schools. We could have afforded to hire counselors and reduce the ratio of student to counselors. That's tremendous. That has got to be addressed. It's got to be a sustainable funding formula that also understands and provides weights for the concentration of children that we service. We have a large number of diverse learners, special education youngsters, diverse learners. I don't like special education. All of our kids need special education. But the diverse learning needs of our children are so varied. We have lots of second language learners. 46% of my population, Spanish is the first language. And then we have high concentrations of poverty. Though that $5,000 plus per student I get is simply not sufficient. And so that's a major challenge, the financial challenge. I often think of it as a meal. You know, you want to give your child the veggie and the meat and the salad. And I can't provide the salad. I can't provide the sundae. And how do you turn to a child who plays on a basketball team in another school district and sees the locker room and the facilities that they have and say, but you don't get that, you don't deserve it because we're 48 out of 50 and because I have to pay for pensions. So that's a real challenge. And the second, I think, is legitimacy, organizational legitimacy. I mean, I was stunned at the perceived lack of respect that the community members believe that the district has for them. People don't believe that the district respects them. They don't believe that we're transparent about anything. There's this big secret that we're doing. They don't have trust in that we're going to deliver for their children what we say we're going to deliver. And we have not engaged the community. So that organizational legitimacy that Malcolm Gladwell talks about is hugely important, and that's a big challenge. So yes, how do we say our test scores are going down because the standards are going up, but I need you to invest more? Right. It just sounds like a frickin' frack statement. It doesn't make sense. So how do we? I stayed away from that kind of language. So how do we?
It's close. It's really close.
Yeah, it was really close.
She's had years of practice.
It's interesting because that directly relates to a challenge that you alluded to, which is staying the course. And what I worry about in terms of the corporate executives' engagement in our public school system is they've been putting a lot of money into the system for a while. Their money, which is big money on the one hand, is a drop in the bucket relative to the overall budget. They've been at it for many years. If you look at something like the Chicago Public Education Fund, which has been around for a long time, we've raised $50 million for Chicago Public Schools that's been leveraged in some amazing ways, and we're now on another fund that I think is raising another $25 or $35 million. When you look at that, you have some people say, okay, the number is now 2/3 and it's gone up from just over 50%, but there's another third and that's not fast enough, and if I were a company, I'd be out of business. And so there's the sense that the corporate executive has to wrap their brain around the fact that we're moving a very big organization in totality and be willing to keep going, which I think at times has been challenging, especially when you overlay the leadership changes. The turnover in leadership is something, we had that stability with Arnie for a long time. I think that helped a lot. He was one of the longest serving superintendents in the country, which is amazing at 8 years, I think it was.
6.
Was it 6 years?
6.
6 years, okay. 6 years, longest running. And then, of course, we had the series of changes that we all lived through. Obviously, we have someone who's amazing right now. And again, we do want to all chain her to her chair. But that does get to the point of making sure the incentives are there, so she wants to be there to fight the fight the next day. And without that, I think the corporate executives will really abandon ship if they don't have that continuity.
So making sure we have a chance to open for question and answer. And Tim, you're going to answer the next question. I want to make sure that we have a few minutes, and this is going to be the speed round panelists, because we've got about 5 minutes to cover this. But what do we know about success in working with low-income students of color across the country? What are the examples? What do schools and districts look like that do this work well? And Tim, we're going to start with you to tell us some, either focusing on what you see across the country, or what do we need to do?
It's really easy. And it's quality of teaching and learning, it's quality of leadership, it's parent engagement, it's school culture, and it's teacher collaboration. Those are the 5 essentials. Those are things we know predict substantial improvement. If you get 3 of those 5 things right, you're literally 10 times more likely to make substantial improvement and 30 times less likely to stagnate. So, and we can measure them, school by school, and give schools information about what matters and what doesn't and how they're doing that is actionable. So it's not easy to make that happen in 681 schools, but it's clear what we have to do. Since it's a rare moment that I have the floor, I just want to address. I want to address one other issue that was rampaging around in my brain about the profession of teaching, because we didn't talk about people and the quality, the importance of the quality of people in this profession, and what Chicago and the nation must do to fundamentally alter that. And this is a damning statistic about Chicago, but the average ACT score of a veteran Chicago public school teacher is 19. Yeah.
College ready is 21, just so folks know.
It doesn't mean there aren't incredibly capable, talented, phenomenal people in our profession. There are, of course there are. But somehow we have to figure out how to build a profession that actually attracts them and keeps them and makes it interesting enough for them to keep doing this work. And if we don't do that, I'm going to say one more thing. I'm going to channel not Karen Lewis, but Randy Weingarten. If I was Randy Weingarten, and this is more provocative probably than useful, but if I was Randy Weingarten, I would say this. I would say we need, as a union, to start behaving a lot more like the American Medical Association or the bar, which is self-regulatory. And we cannot prevail. We will not survive if we are guaranteeing a job for life, for everybody, right? It's not a profession if those are the terms. And the thing is about this is that, and there's all kinds of reasons for people to be worried about capricious school leaders doing silly things. But the thing is, if we're going to actually value the teaching profession and elevate the teaching profession, then we need to create one where it does attract and retain and keep its very best people. And you can't if everybody is good, if it's Lake Wobegon.
So on that note, I have been officially wrapped from the back. And so it's time to open up for question and answer, so we make sure that the audience gets to have some of their questions answered. There are 2 microphones that are going around. So please, if you're going to ask a question, put your hand up and someone will hand you a microphone and you can stand up. Thank you.
We haven't heard about Chicago Public Schools' efforts with respect to parental engagement. What are the Chicago Public Schools doing about that?
Yeah, so we have a very detailed and very focused 5-year plan, action plan, and you know we've got these 5 pillars, and I've defined them. But the most important pillar is the third pillar, which is at the center that holds the other two, and that is parental and community engagement. And what we need to do and what we are doing and what we have been doing is engaging parents in the conversations that we're having. Our parents can understand that. We've created and will be expanding the number of what we call parent universities in our schools, where parents can come to learn about Common Core, how to help their child at home, to learn about health issues and how and what the resources are in community to address their social and health needs. I think the third piece of what I'm saying is it's very hard to engage people who don't trust or like you. Our parents don't trust the system. They don't like the system. They love me. They don't like the system. And so we've got to really deliver on our word. And trust is built when you say you're going to do something and you do it. And so, and you don't hide from people. So obviously school consolidations was a very difficult challenge for me, for the mayor, for our board, for our parents, for the communities. But it was necessary, and we were very upfront, very direct, and we made promises to parents about how their children would benefit and what we would do. And we've delivered on every single one of those promises to our children. Libraries, air conditionings in the classrooms, the kinds of science labs that our children needed, integration of arts in the schools, laptops, iPads for all of our children grade 3 through 8. And despite what we read, there was going to be, rivers of blood across the street, and I don't want to minimize violence and pain to our children. With our safe passage, we had not and have not had one incident of our children being harmed on their way to school on our safe passages route. It just hasn't happened. Why? Because and it's so important. So very, very important. And so what we're doing for parent engagement is really building that trust, building that respect, continuing to deliver on what we say we're going to do, and bringing parents into the tent, into the schoolhouses for those conversations. And we just have to continue to do that with all deliberate speed.
We have another question over here.
Tim, it's wonderful to see a fellow European trying to improve the American system. I come from Poland when literacy level is 100%. And Polish kids pass the American kids in all the scores, and faster and faster. And it pains me because my kids are born in America and raised here, and they went to public schools. They did well. But I want to address Barbara's issue about extending the time in school. Our son was still in school in the last year when the Polish holiday and the Italian holiday was given up because it was supposed to be educationally advantageous to the kids. They were sitting and doing nothing. There was no curriculum developed. Schools weren't ready, and he was in a select enrollment school. It pained me to see that, because this time was not used properly. And the promises that Mayor made to both ethnic communities which built Chicago were not fulfilled. They were not learning about the contribution of Italian Americans, and they were not learning about the contribution of Polish Americans into the Chicago, building Chicago. How do you address that?
Two ways. I put up 3 fingers, but it's really 2. The first is that I'm not sure if there's a direct correlation between holidays and children being in school and the question that you raise around the education and the value of children and the contributions of ethnic groups. Under the Common Core state standards, the thing that's really valuable there, that is addressed in our social studies curriculum. That is addressed, and we do monitor that, and I know that's a gruesome kind of word to monitor it, but we ensure that that curriculum is taught. We have developed, after 17 years of being on the books in Springfield, that we should teach African and African American history to our children. 17 years on the book, nothing mentioned to it. We developed that curriculum, wrote it in 7 months, delivered it to our schools. People in partnership with the DeSable Museum right now are going through the professional training there, and we've delivered on that. We have to look at every single one of the contributions of this diverse palette in Cleveland. It's so diverse, it should be yummy if you think of food, and to deliver on what we promise. And we are moving in that direction. And I'm so regretful that that didn't happen for you.
I would just say this about the time thing. I think that frankly what the city of Chicago accomplished by lengthening the day by an hour and what?
27 minutes.
27 minutes, and the year by 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
In a time when there were no resources, really, to speak of, for 4% increases for teachers a year was actually a coup. I agree that the time may not be well spent in some cases, but that's a victory that is going to pay dividends for forever. The day won't get shorter, and the year won't get shorter. Yes, we need to fill the day in more interesting ways, no question. But we should be a little bit cautious about declaring failure when you have a breakthrough like that last year. Was that last year?
Last year.
We've done something for a generation of kids that needed to happen for probably 50 years. So just a word of caution on that one.
Hi, my name is Lee Rubenstein. I'm with the Civic Leadership Foundation. And my question is basically, have you been able to track graduates to see how they have done once they've gone out the door? How are they doing in their careers? How are they doing in college? How are they as active citizens? Is there any tracking of how Chicago graduates are doing?
One of the problems in this profession, frankly, and I'm not going to make excuses, is that there's great data on school performance, and the consortium is sitting on it for Chicago. There's decent data in terms of college persistence and completion, and there's employment data. None of it is actually connected.
But
Wait.
I'll be the good news. I'll be the good news cherry on top.
You should be. But what Sara and I are actually working on right now with a team at UEI is to report systematically on, starting with that on-track number in 9th grade, on the schools, every school in Chicago, and how they're doing in terms of on-track rates, how they're doing in terms of college acceptance, post-secondary acceptance, whether the match is right, which is incredibly important, then how they're doing in terms of persistence in post-secondary and completion. That, and then reporting that to every parent in the city of Chicago. So I can know the test scores may go up and down incrementally or slowly or whatever, but what I really care about is educational attainment. That's where the best social science literature lies in terms of living longer, earning more, going to prison less, voting more, volunteering more, having children with higher levels of educational attainment, etc.
So we're going to let Robin, this will be the last word, and Mellody, and then we'll be closing.
One little bit of good news. So Tim's right, we have not had the data systems to follow kids from system to system. I'm a former high school teacher, and it was insane that we don't know what happens to our kids. And frankly, whether they needed remediation when they got to community college or a four-year college, and where they went, and were there patterns to that? Did they need the bottom 10% need remediation in everything? Did 50% need remediation in math? The state is in the process of building out those systems right now. And so we are going to be able to, over the next few years, to track that. Better still, the state is actually putting together report cards that for the first time, what you'll see if you're a high school parent on the report card is where did graduating classes go, how many of them went on to college, how many of them needed remediation when they got there, and how many of them then persisted. Because that's what you want to know. When you're actually choosing high schools, as I've done recently, you're looking at those are the results that you most care about. So we were stymied, we're building it out, and we've put a hold on space so that we can report that out to parents at the high school level. So we have messy data now for CPS, and the matriculation rates are going like that for for college, but it's still somewhat messy data.
Yeah, and I think the more that we engage in dual enrollment and early college, the better we'll be able to begin to make those linkages as well. But I don't know anywhere in the country where there's that level of seamlessness to know where our children go and what
goal.
it is truly
It's
a
a
national
missed opportunity for one other very specific reason. Besides being able to measure the progress of the program, I think many of you know we have a school, Ariel School, that is a small public school, and it was before there was charter legislation or anything. We have 500 kids. And what we have been pushing very, very hard is keeping track of the students to build what we all know and have experienced in our private school experiences, an alumni network. If we had an alumni network for the Chicago Public Schools, what could happen here in terms of long-term support to the schools could be amazing. When you think of the very, very, very successful people that went to Chicago Public Schools that we don't necessarily think of or keep track of, and how we could bring those people back into the fold to help the school system in major ways. You know, I remember I always used to say to Arnie Duncan, I'm like, Larry Ellison went to a Chicago public school. You know, he's what, the third or fourth wealthiest person in the United States? You know, to have that mentality that they have at Princeton where I went, which is, you owe us. You know, you leave the school, they tell you on day one they are
gently
coming.
delivered.
No, they don't deliver it gently. That's the thing.
Like I said, not gently delivered.
There is a sense of obligation that you are completely aware of when you are going out the door with that cap on your head. And we should have that same sense of obligation with public school students. And that alumni network has all sorts of ways that it could pay off in spades, not just money, but just the sense of community that it would create. So the data is hugely important.
Liz Thompson, I know you're going to come up and take us out into the evening, so please come and join us.
So, Tim, you talked about Pete Best. Have you heard of Danny Stitsworth?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was the guy that was before Pete Best. Yes. That's how I feel being up here with you guys. So can we give a hand to Barbara and Tim, Sara, Mellody, and Robin? You guys, incredible. Incredible. And we're always so very concerned about timing, right? We respect your time. We respect the fact that you came out on an evening like this in order to hear about this very important topic, but sometimes I wish we just had a little more time, right, to engage in this very, very worthwhile topic. But thank you all for being here with us tonight, and thank you all for being here with us tonight. I am a governing board member of the University of Chicago Charter School, as well as a trustee of the university, and I couldn't be more proud to be here tonight. Is Shane Evans here in the room? Okay. While I am a trustee of the university and while the Urban Education Institute has a place in my heart, my deepest sense of commitment belongs to the charter school, and no one can talk about what we do as an organization better than Shane Evans. So I'd like to introduce Shane Evans, the CEO of the University of Chicago Charter School.
Good evening, everybody. It's tough to come on after that, both after this panel and after Liz Thompson. Liz, thank you for that introduction. I'll be quick. Basically, what we're at UChicago Charter School, what we're after, is something that I like to call the belief gap. Not just an achievement gap, but the belief gap. The belief that young people from all sides of Chicago could be doing amazing things. We have one mission at UChicago Charter School, and that is to prepare students for acceptance to, but most importantly, graduation from college. We serve 1,900 students, 4 campuses. We have a pre-K to 12th grade superhighway. All 1,900 of our young people are African American. Well, 99% of our students are African American. 82% would qualify for free and reduced lunch. But what we've proven, and you've heard some of the folks talking about it tonight, what we've proven is that it's not just possible for young people all over the south side of Chicago, but actually probable for those young people to do really, really impressive things. And in fact, what's gonna speak louder than my statements about UChicago Charter is our 3 young people that we have here today. These are actually the most special guests that we have in the building. So it's really my pleasure this evening to introduce you to 3 young ladies. These are seniors at our Woodlawn campus. Olivia Singleton, and Priscilla Agbo, if they could please rise really quickly. So just in brief, these 3 young ladies represent the exemplars of what we're after. Aaliyah and Olivia have been accepted to the University of Chicago with full scholarships. Priscilla has been accepted to Stanford University with a full scholarship. And so basically, they are really the shining stars of this evening from the South Side, despite whatever obstacles they might have faced. And as Priscilla has a goal to basically make sure that we have clean water, not just in America, but everywhere, it's not just, the end isn't just college, but it's actually leaders. Leaders to make the world a better place for all. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce two of our staff at our high school, Michael Lockenbach, our assistant director, and Asada Moore, our principal and director of the high school campus. So in closing, Liz, should I be turning this back over to you, or should I just be closing out? Okay, all right, I'm just gonna turn it back over to Liz. Thank you for this time, and yeah, there's a belief gap, because young people are gonna do amazing things if they have the right expectations and the appropriate supports. Liz.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I won't keep you very much longer, but you know, I'm the closer. So they asked me to close because I don't mind asking for anything. When it comes to those three ladies back there, and they're just representative of the other young people that we have at our charter high school. Tim, we always talk about the so what. You know, we talk about education all the time, but the so what. And I'm gonna engage you to help me with the statistic. When young people graduate from high school and then from college, can you give us that statistic about why we should care? They become more voting citizens.
Oh, you want? I think I did it, but literally 10-year lifespan difference between high school dropout and college graduate.
Lifetime earnings, employment rate, voting rate.
Robin's giving it to me.
Robin.
Giving blood, volunteering, having children with higher levels of educational attainment. It pays dividends to do that for generations.
So that's the so what. Because everything improves when we help our young people realize their potential, and when we help all of our young people realize their potential. You know, I say it all the time. I was born and raised in Cabrini Green, and my brother, who went on to the Naval Academy, would say when he came home, you know, I don't understand why more corporate leaders don't really recruit the young people that come out of the hood. Right? And our hood had about 6 O's. It was hood. Right? It wasn't just the hood, it was the hood. Because by the time we came into high school, we had learned negotiation skills, right? How do we walk from this street to that street? Who do we have to negotiate with in order to do that successfully? We learned how to budget the quarter that we had in our pockets. We learned all of these higher level executive skills by the time we were 10. And so it's baffling to me why we don't appreciate the skills that the young people coming from the neighborhood that we serve, why we don't pay more attention to them. They come into adulthood with more skills than many people have after they've been adults for a long time. And so I just ask you to please recognize that these young people overcome real challenges. I mean, they are real challenges. And so to celebrate the accomplishments of the young ladies we have here, it's a really rewarding thing for me because they are me. I couldn't be more proud of them. And so I ask you to join with me tonight in not only celebrating their success, but also helping us to ensure the success of many more like them. What can you do? Someone asked? Oh, thank you. My buddy Steven. So what we've learned about our young people going to college is that $2,500 college scholarship is the average gap between the financial assistance that a high school student needs and what they receive from selective colleges and universities. $2,500. That's the money that they need to buy a laptop, the money that they need to buy a plane ticket home, the money that they need to buy books, which is very often not covered even in a full ride, like our ladies have received. So while all of you may not be able to, but for those of you who can, we are trying to raise enough of these $2,500 scholarships that our young people can safely get on a plane and go to the colleges that 90% of them have already been accepted to. So I would ask that you open up your folders and see the pledge cards in there. And if you are able, if you are willing, if you have the space in your checkbook and in your heart, if you could take a moment to complete those cards, and it doesn't have to be $2,500, it can be $5. We just want your help in doing the work that Tim and Asada and Mike do every day, and Shane, and we would appreciate that very much. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for being here tonight. I'd like to recognize Tom Wick and Maddie Wirtz, our development directors at the charter school. For helping make tonight possible. And also, I don't know if Benita Mall is here tonight, but Benita is the executive director of the University of Chicago Women's Board. Tonight would not have happened without the support of all of them. I now invite you to stay a little bit longer. We have more hors d'oeuvres, more wine, and if you haven't already done so, please take the time to meet Priscilla, Aaliyah, and Olivia, and just get a little bit more understanding of the amazing work that's happening at the University of Chicago Charter School. Thank you.